Slickstream is a company basically designed for publishers to increase their on-site engagement. And so the mission sprung from essentially the thought that there are a lot of options for publishers of how to bring people onto their site. Through SEO, there's a lot of solutions in place that bring traffic in, and then it's kind of a dearth of options of what to do once you have traffic on the site.
That was John Greely, and this is episode number 200 of the Chopped podcast. Hey there, how are you doing today? I'm so glad you've joined me. I'm Marley McMillan. I'm with the blog Namely Marley, and I am the host of the Chopped podcast. Look, I have an MBA and was previously a COO of a startup company, but you know what? None of that prepared me for a career in food blogging. As a food blogger, you need to understand entrepreneurism, productivity, mindset, marketing, social media, and even some technical things like SEO. And so that's what we're here talking about on the Chop podcast. All of it as it relates to food blogging and influencing. Guess what? Today is the 200th episode of the show, and I'm so excited. I started this podcast several years ago with the goal of bringing, my thought was like a food blogging conference type conversations at home to you. I figured that way you could gain the knowledge and expertise of what's being offered at these conferences right from the comfort of your very own home. Of course, some of what goes on at conferences is just getting to know other food bloggers, and that's why I love to share food blogger conversations with you too. There are many of these throughout these 200 episodes. But of course, sometimes the conversations are more technical, just like you would find at a conference, with some more tactic and strategic things that you can be doing as a food blogger. That's an example of what's going on today. We'll talk more about that in a minute. I just want you to know I've learned a lot myself personally from this show, and I hope you have too. We're celebrating the 200th episode of the Chop podcast in style. I've partnered, in fact, with Slickstream Engagement Suite for today's episode. If you're curious about what Slickstream is, it's a company that's committed to providing tools to increase engagement with a blog's audience. And one of those tools you might recognize as hearts fluttering around on the screen. If you want to learn more, today's guest is John Greely, and we're going to talk more about it. But to celebrate this 200th episode of the Chop podcast, we're offering a fun little giveaway. In fact, if you're listening to today's episode, you're already a winner because everyone is eligible to receive a bonus 30-day free trial with Slickstream. That's 30 additional days on top of the regular 30-day free trial they already offer. So you'll get a 60-day free trial with Slickstream just by entering the code CHOPPED200 when you register for the free trial. You have until August 1, 2020 to use this code, so don't delay. I want you to know that this is something Slickstream is offering you, the Chop Podcast listener. I am not an ambassador for them. I'm not an affiliate, and I don't get a kickback. I just wanted you to learn more about a new services available that I think you might find interesting. So let's talk a little bit more about that. There are several new services and resources for food bloggers these days. I look at it as evidence of a growing industry that we're developing. So Slickstream is one of those new services, and they just entered the market last October. I don't know about you, but I'm already starting to see many food bloggers adopt it. I'm sure you've seen those hearts fluttering across the screen when you've been on some sites. Or maybe it's the bar that's across the top that shows different blog posts that are related to the one that you're looking at. I'm sure it's probably left you curious whether this is something that you should be implementing on your site too. I always think it's a good idea to make informed decisions. That's why I'm sharing this discussion with you today. I think you'll agree with me that Slickstream offers many benefits for food bloggers, particularly as it relates to increased engagement. The question will be for you is this: are those benefits worth the cost? Will there be a return on investment, otherwise known as ROI? Will there be that ROI for your site? And that's why I'm asking John a lot of questions in today's conversation. And I hope you look at these as the type of questions you could be asking of any plugin or tool or service that you may want to add to your site. Does it add value? Will it slow my site down? How difficult is it to implement? And things like that. The good news is with the 60-day free trial, well, that kind of gives you plenty of time to kind of kick the tires around and see if it's something that works for you. One thing I encourage you to do if you're thinking about starting this 60-day trial is to tag the day in Google Analytics when you implement that trial so that you can make a good assessment of the value it brings to your site and to your revenue. I really enjoyed talking with John about user experience and engagement and the mission of Slickstream and all of this as it has an impact on blogs. It was really a fun conversation with a lot of valuable information, and I hope you love this discussion. So let's get straight to it. Here's today's featured conversation with John Greely. Hey everyone, I'm happy to have on the show today John Greely. He's with the company Slickstream. Hey John, welcome to the Chop Podcast.
Hi, Marley. Thanks for having me.
I'm so glad to have you here. I think we're going to be talking about some things that I think everybody's going to be excited to hear. So we should just get started, don't you think?
Absolutely.
So, can you tell me about Slickstream and what the company is and when it was founded and what it does?
Sure. I'll get started with Slickstream is a company basically designed for publishers to increase their on-site engagement. And so the mission sprung from essentially the thought that there are a lot of options for publishers of how to bring people onto their site. Through SEO, there's a lot of solutions in place that bring traffic in, and then it's kind of a dearth of options of what to do once you have traffic on the site. So we have the mission of increasing engagement on your site by providing your users, your visitors, any number of different ways to interact and to find the content that they're looking for specifically. So Slickstream was founded by Kingston Duffy. This is his fourth Silicon Valley tech company. And he and a few of his previous coworkers, Carl Hubbard and Preet Shin, decided they wanted to try something new about 4 years ago, 5 years ago now, and sort of had a little incubator of different ideas in the publishing space that they wanted to work with, some around data visualization, some otherwise. And it was about 2018, November 2018, that the idea of Slickstream itself kind of came into being. So one of the earliest adopters of Slickstream was Pinch of Yum. Bjork Ostrom
Yes.
was put in touch with Kingston. And they were sort of this great teacher user early on in, well, what does a site need? How do you increase a site? What are the best practices? And then sort of growing through that beta early adopter stage, it wasn't until October of this past year, so October 2019, that we left beta and Slickstream as it currently is was released to the world.
So I love it because it sounds to me like you said we want to solve a problem, and then you went in search of what that problem was that you wanted to solve, basically.
Yeah, I think that's exactly it. Is this space, the publisher space especially, is so important. It gets so much traffic. There's so much value to be had there, but it's also pretty underserved. These
Yes.
publishers, in a lot of cases, are working with WordPress widgets that they're collecting and trying to find out on their own whether or not these are interacting well with each other. They're working with their developers. It's sort of a wild west in a lot of ways, and that just feels wrong. It feels like there
Yeah.
is so much potential there for companies to step in and provide a little more comprehensive solutions. There's nothing wrong with these with the WordPress widget space, but sometimes it's very difficult for an individual publisher, particularly one without a full team at their disposal, to manage all of it. I mean, honestly,
Yeah.
there's just so much out there. So getting help and podcasts like this one and what Bjork and Lindsay do with Food Blogger Pro as well, those are really valuable for the information. And then sometimes it just feels like the tools need to have caught up.
Yeah, I love that. And in fact, when I was getting my MBA, we would do a lot of case studies of different programs or different companies. And I remember one in particular was about problem solving, and they actually talked about a university that they built the university, they built the campus, and then they didn't put any sidewalks in because they waited to see where the people were walking, and that's where they decided to put the sidewalks in. And to me, that's what I'm kind of hearing you say is like it's a really smart company that kind of listens. It's not you're not out there trying to force your solution on people. You're actually listening, like what are the real problems that people are experiencing, and how can we be a part of solving that?
Okay, that is exactly right. I think that is exactly kind of the attitude we're trying to take to it, which we're not trying to sell you a solution that doesn't work because that doesn't
Yeah.
help anybody,
No.
right? For us, we only are successful if our users are successful. This is one of those situations where we charge based on page views. That's how we incur our costs, and that's the way that we make money. But it's also the way that our publishers make money. So when they're getting more page views, which is our intention, it's a mutually beneficial situation. So there's literally no incentive for us to try to sell a product that's not doing the absolute utmost that it can be, right? So
Yes.
we're using the sidewalk tread, right? The tread on the grass to
Yes.
determine, oh, this is a valuable area to explore more. And that's really what's guiding our product philosophy.
Yes, I like that. Okay, so let's go into this a little bit because I loved what you said earlier on about how so many things are trying to help us get more traffic, but then what do we do with that traffic once it gets there? And I think it can be a lost opportunity if somebody comes on the site and then they leave and then there's no opportunity for engagement. And so if you could talk a little bit, I'm most intrigued, of course, by the little hearts. And could you talk about the hearts?
So the hearts were one of the first kind of aha moments at Slickster. It was an idea. This is sort of a social proof. It
Yes.
shows that people are engaging with the content. They're pretty. They fit the sort of social media mindset that a lot of visitors are engaging with these days, particularly since so much traffic is on your phone. That having the hearts feels pretty intuitive, but we really were shocked with the uptake. The hearts were sort of a fun little idea, and then it turns out that they get used like crazy. So just the little fluttering alone draws a little bit of affordance. It shows people that these exist in the corner. And for those who haven't seen it, it's essentially a heart icon in the bottom right corner of the page that when you click on it, it sends hearts fluttering onto the page and shows other users who are currently on the page that somebody from, in my case, let's say Santa Monica, or in your case, Kansas City, has liked this content that they're currently on. So it's social proof that this article is being browsed right now, and it's a means for visitors to express their appreciation for the content, which is then logged. So your most popular article on your site might have thousands and thousands of favorites already, whereas a new one might start from scratch. That uptake, the amount of people using it, surprised us dramatically. It's about 6 to 6.5% of total page views result in a favorite on sites that have them.
Wow. So that kind of what that tells me is that it's really surprising that there wasn't some other way for, people can leave a comment, they can leave a review, but those feel a little like, you've got to do some investment there. It's surprising me to think that we hadn't had something like this all along where people can just tap on it and indicate that they like this recipe.
Right. And then what we found from that is that there's actually a lot more utility to it beyond just the expressing that you like it, expressing the appreciation. It does help guide publishers in terms of what content has a high favorites to page views ratio. So
Mm.
if 10% of people are favoriting this content, this is the kind of content that your audience generally wants, or at least the audience has found it appropriately, either from your acquisition strategy or whatever else. Whereas if it's lower, perhaps this was maybe a mismatch of content and audience. It also is a means to enable email collection. This was sort of where the functionality followed the tread marks. I'm going to keep using this metaphor. I love it. So it followed
Okay.
the grass treading where people were using favorites, and then we decided, well, what happens after you've used the favorites? We should have a means to save it. So those favorites are saved within your browser, but if you wanted to sync it to a different browser or your phone or anything else, you need to create an email. You need to sync it with an email address. We have no interest in the email addresses of the users of your site, but you do. So that's why we added an opt-in button on top of that would opt into collecting those email addresses for your subscriber list. So there's just a lot of overlap with these engagement tools. An engaged user is a user that's valuable to a blogger. That's kind of the person that you're really targeting. And so capturing that value is really important to us. And it started with the little people use favorites, and then it grew from there.
Well, it kind of reminds me of Sales 101 too, right? Where, you just want to get them to do something. They need to take even just the smallest amount of action improves the odds that they're going to take some other kind of action. So that seems like, of course we'd like them to subscribe or leave a comment or leave a review. There's other options, but those are bigger. And so I feel like this is just like, it's just like a little skip. It's a little
Mm-hmm.
step on the grass, a little tread, the very first step to help them start walking on the path. And I don't know, I think that's really important.
Yeah, and I think that your point about comments is a good one because comments have existed for forever on the
Yes.
internet. That's the kind of the traditional. If you want to leave feedback on a post, leave a comment. But comments are tough. They require moderation. They can be abused by bots. They have spam.
Yes.
And even if you're a user, you have to sometimes create an account. If you don't have to create an account, you might not know that. You have to do the captcha. It's just a lot more, and it doesn't sound like a lot when you describe the individual steps, but it's a lot more than just clicking a heart.
Yes. Right, exactly. And are you saying that I would then also be able to know who was doing that? In other words, like I'd be able to have the email addresses of people who clicked the heart?
So yes and no. There
Okay.
is a means for that. We don't track that specifically. We really have no interest in people's personal data. The data we collect is anonymized. But let's say that you have a user on your site that really likes your content, is favoriting all sorts of things. It would kind of be lost opportunity for that person to not then be able to sign up for a newsletter. So when they
Right.
subscribe or when they create an account within Slickstream so that they can see their favorites, they can save their favorited recipes, for example. So a lot of our recipe sites use this. it's kind of creating your own little recipe list. And then to save that list, you need an email to sync it to. And that email address, you can then, on the prompt, opt in to sign up for your newsletter.
I
So
see.
the uptake on that is not particularly high when favoriting is not prompting for it. If you're only requiring people who have decided, oh, I actually want to save these favorites, not that many people go through that process. What some of our sites have done, the ones that particularly value email addresses for their lists, is making that mandatory or at least prompted when somebody favorites something. So you see that you see that the hearts are fluttering in the corner. You're like, oh, I want to favorite this recipe as well. You click it in the bottom right, and it says, great, to use favoriting, just sign up for the newsletter. That is not
Oh.
a requirement. That most of our sites don't do that. But if your goal really is around email collection, it can be another way to drive that.
I see. Okay, that makes sense. Okay, so what I like about all of this though is that like you said earlier, I feel like this takes something that's very successful on social media. Like let's talk about Instagram where all I have to do is double tap on the photo, it shows that I liked it and I move on. That's to me what feels like it's happening here when I'm on a site and I see that heart, I click, I feel like I'm sending a message to the blogger like I really like this. This is really good. And I don't know, there's some kind of interaction that goes there. I don't know. I think it's really smart.
And honestly, that's the first and foremost thing about favorites. None of that other follow-on stuff works unless people like to do it, right?
Right.
And there's such a community feel in the blogging space in general, but particularly in the food blogging space. The reason that a lot of these bloggers are doing what they do isn't all money. It's not this, to maximize the amount of money that they're getting from their site. That's important, but they're doing it for their visitors. They're doing it because they want to share the content that they put their heart and soul with into the world. And it feels good to, as a user, validate that, and as a publisher, to get that feedback.
Right, exactly. And I think we're all looking for things that can, you can spend a lot of time on getting more traffic, and that's important too. But what about the notion of what we do with those people when they arrive here, when they're on your site, and are there ways to increase engagement and or we want that dwell time. I just feel like those are all maybe you have a higher dwell time on those pages that have more hearts on it. So I'd be interested. I think on the data side it would be very interesting too.
Yeah, it really is. And this is one of the nice things about the position we're in, is we get to see a lot of macro level data.
I
And
bet.
one of the things that surprised us a little bit is that everybody knows that your revenue corresponds to your page views. You have RPMs, that's revenue per thousand page views. But what might surprise you is it actually doesn't depend on increasing page views to increase revenue. Active time on site, which is adjacent to but not the same as the way that Google measures your average session duration, but the amount of time that a user spends actively on your site is directly correlated with the amount of revenue. So you can get more revenue from ads refreshing on a page that somebody's engaging with, either by clicking favorites or playing a game in the corner, or just being on the recipe that they wanted to be on. That's more valuable than having them click around a bunch of interstitial pages or be navigating your site, which might create more page views, but in fact wouldn't create more revenue for you.
Okay, so that's another thing that we should talk about. I actually haven't experimented too much with that part, and that is there is an opportunity for people to play games on your site.
Yeah, so that's minor. We have sort of the core features of the engagement suite, which is our main product. The core features are search, discovery, and engagement. So favorites, uh, the search tool, and then sort of the film strips, which are content recommendation. A fourth one, well, we have five that we list. The fourth one would be analytics, and the fifth would be these games. Right now, we just have the one, which is sort of a tile slider. It's recommended content based on the content you're already on, but it's just a fun little way for you to slide around an image. And so many of these images, particularly on food blogs, are so
Yes.
pretty to begin with. But you slide around the tiles until it gives you the recommended content at the end, and then you can click through to it. It's not high tech. This isn't something crazy, but it's another means that's optional for users to stay on your site and engage more with your content. And we found
Yeah.
that the uptake on that is not small.
And what do you mean by that? The uptick is not small. In other
Sorry,
words,
just
it's a
people are
significant.
using it.
Yes.
It's not the biggest part we do. It's probably the smallest of the four in terms of the engagement, but it's significant enough that we continue to support it, and we continue to suggest it for publishers who are looking for more ways to get people to engage with their site.
So again, I want to go to this point of like, let's say somebody's come to a page, it's maybe it's brownies, and they're a little skeptical. They're like, I just feel like there are some people who are just looking to be convinced that this is the recipe they want to use, or otherwise they're just going to click back and go find another one.
Mhm.
And I feel like having something that engages them on the page helps kind of break down that wall of skepticism a little bit, and they start to, buy into, oh, I like this recipe.
Yes, I mean, absolutely. I think there is a concern among publishers, which is real, about being too busy. We don't want to have too much affordance on the page. But our kind of ideal use case is, let's say that you're searching for chocolate chip cookies, right?
Yeah.
And you search Google and you find this, and you click on it, and it says, "Oh, this has 33,000 favorites in the bottom right." You can tell because it's very similar to the way that you've been using social media over time. Oh, 33,000 people have liked this. That's social proof right off the bat. And so then
Yes.
you read the recipe, you think, oh, this is good. You save it by favoriting it. You're like, oh, I like this. You either print it out or whatever it is. But before you go, when you're scrolling back up, oh, there's the film strip toolbar, which is kind of like the checkout aisle, the little, you buy a little candy
Yeah.
at the checkout aisle. You're like, oh, actually, I had been looking for a good brownie recipe. You click on that one, and it takes you directly to more content that's interesting to you. Maybe then from that your session continues by saying, actually, one other thing I've been searching for, and you click the search box, and then our search is generally, we're very proud of our search. We think it's a really good experience, and it's certainly more so than the standard WordPress experience. It's reactive search as you type, category based, and even ingredient based. So I can get into all that later, but the idea is that user might have just gone, even if they got exactly what they wanted, they might have gone to your site and bounced. They might have gone to your site and gone to print page and left. We're trying to take that user who's had a successful experience and translate it into a more successful experience that generates more revenue for the publisher.
Oh, yeah, there's so much there to unpack. I don't even know where to start. But I think the idea that, somebody can come to the page and find a way to be engaged with the page, I think, makes a big difference. I love the fact that you have data on the back end. So I've went to your site and looked at testimonials, and I see that people are actually using the data that you provide to understand their audience better and then deliver better content as a result.
Yeah, I mean, that's one of the privileged things about the position we're in is we just get to see so much. So the analytics that we provide within the engagement suite are largely tailored to your own site, but we also are trying more and more to understand the way that it relates to the competitive market in general, to other food blogs for food bloggers, to other verticals as well. So the analytics we're providing, we want people to use them. We want them to be valuable. A lot of people come in and they see the favorites and think, I want that. Or they see the search and they say, I want that. But when you get the full ecosystem, it's almost too enticing, the analytics, to use it as well, because content planning is so important. And if you see, for example, that your most favorited, the highest percentage of favorites in any article that you get, let's say it's 15% of page views are favoriting this, let's say a curry recipe, right?
Mhm.
15% of page views are resulting in favorites. You want to be promoting that more. That's popular content that people are really enjoying. And you either want to be creating more curry content in that case, or featuring this content either in newsletters or social media or elsewhere to drive more people to it, right? Or
Right.
maybe you're seeing that the you did an advertising campaign that was leading people to that, and it was resulting in very low favorite percentage. You'd want that information as well to guide, well, maybe I should be using a different piece of content.
And maybe it needs updated pictures, or maybe the pictures aren't great enough or something like that. So there's a
So
lot of things you could be looking at on that page to say, hey, what can I do to increase engagement here?
that is absolutely right. And I don't mean for it to just be about the favoriting percentage as well, because there's a lot of
Yes.
other insights that we get. So we can see, if you're on the cookie page, what percentage of people click through to the brownie page, right? Or what was the most commonly clicked through to page from there?
Yes.
Those kind of insights allow a little more content clustering for publishers, just in terms of, oh, this content is like this other content, and that's not necessarily how you create it, but it can be how you analyze it and you think about it within what else you need to be publishing.
Okay, John, I want to ask you a question because I feel like obviously that's data that's available on Google Analytics, but
Hmm.
it takes a little bit of fortitude to figure that out. And so it seems to me like what I'm hearing you say is Slickstream has this data as well, but it's maybe a little bit easier to understand.
Yeah, we certainly hope for that to be the case. We are nowhere near as robust of an analytics suite as Google Analytics, and we're not trying to supplant it, but rather just to supplement it. Right? We
Right.
integrate with Google Analytics that so we can be sending. We'll fire events when somebody does an action with Slickstream on your site, and that can get sent to Google Analytics if you choose to. And then we've been monitoring that. The page view counts aren't identical. There's some bot identification components that are going to cause a small discrepancy, but for the most part, we're able to see your traffic. Google Analytics is also able to see your traffic in much the same way, and we're able to integrate as well, so you can see Slickstream's performance within Google Analytics.
I'm just saying for those people who are kicking themselves because they know that Google Analytics offers so much and yet they're not able to take advantage of it just because of the learning curve it takes to understand it. This might, even just if it was for the tool of getting, more user-friendly analytics, it might be worth it just from that perspective.
Yeah, and look, first of all, for people who feel inadequate with their Google Analytics mastery, like I've been working professionally with Google Analytics for my entire career, and I don't understand half of it.
Oh,
Right? I mean, that's the
yeah.
that's the level of complexity that Google Analytics has.
Yes.
There's no shame in that.
Right.
Uh, but that said, yeah. So our analytics, we're working on it. It's a good experience. We think we can always make it better. But one of the bits of feedback that we've recently listened to was around just making it easier to understand the performance of a post, right? Because about
Yes.
a week after you've had a post, you want to know, so how did that do? So one thing that we're now providing based on user feedback is called an engagement report. And this is essentially just a standard templatized email that goes to you a week after having published a piece of content. These are purely, optional. You can opt out of it, and many of our users do. But they're actually, we found that they've provided pretty valuable, where it says, here's how many page views this got. Here's the percentage of favorites it's received. Here's all of these various components of its performance. And it's always a week after publishing, so you can compare it apples to apples. And it also, we have some fun facts where if it's performing very highly in one category or very, just differently than the rest of your content, we'll flag that up.
Nice, nice. I love that. I think that's an opportunity for people to really, there's so much user information in there, and I feel like it's been something that's been lacking a long time in blogging, and that is um, there you can feel a little like you're kind of removed. You're doing this, and then people come to your site. You post we talked about cookies, chocolate chip cookies, and then people come to that chocolate chip cookie post, and they have a reaction to it, and you want to understand what that reaction is. And we feel it's easy to feel a little removed from that. Maybe they leave a comment, but maybe you're only getting from the comments from the people who really love it or really hate it. But hearing from the people in between or being able to at least suss out that information is really helpful.
Yeah, and this is something we were actually recently just talking about. Is there can be this selection bias for publishers where you want to be
Yes.
focused on your super fans, the fans that really love you and are going to be with you, and that's great. You
Yeah.
should absolutely optimize for the people that like your content. That's who you're doing this for. They're the ones that are going to be sharing it going forward. But they're not the only people consuming your content, right? It's not only super fans clicking on your stuff. In fact, the vast majority are going to be people coming from elsewhere.
Right.
And so it's really important to understand the way that they're perceiving it as well. And it can be easy for publishers to fall into the trap of, I received 3 emails saying this, so therefore it's fact, right?
Yes.
That can be very indicative of what's happening, but it's not always the case.
Right, exactly. So I love that part of it. I also, let's talk a little bit. We'll move past the hearts, even though I hesitate to
Sure.
leave that. I like it so much. But I do like the fact that you have this search feature, and I don't know if everybody understands that. Just out of the box, WordPress does not. It offers a search feature, but it's not very good, and it's not very user friendly for sure. And so Slickstream probably saw that as an opportunity as well. Like if we're going to do this and we're going to be a plugin, let's provide us a really good search feature as well.
Yeah. And so I think that's the search one is really interesting because it is something that everybody places value on in some capacity on your site. It's not used as often as publishers necessarily think that it would be. Their search, our search, anybody's search. But it is so important in those sessions that are going to result in multiple page views for people to find what they're looking for. And
Right.
so when we were creating search originally, basically it was, well, we're categorizing all your data for recommendations anyway. So it's really value. We have the ability to find the data well, and that's one of our core competencies. but what features are valuable. So as you type results is really important. That's something that's lacking from built-in WordPress search. It's something that allows users to find the content that they're looking for more quickly without having to go to a second page. You can just type chocolate, Choco, and it'll populate all the results with chocolate in it as you go.
That's like
It's
called
not.
predictive typing, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Yes.
And so we're able to pull that. But then what we found is, oh, well, publishers were interested in also categories. Desserts would crop up when you search chocolate chip, or maybe I want to just search breakfast, right? So
Yeah.
then we were able to categorize based on categories that you have in your sitemap. So we were able to auto-populate categories as well as part of the site setup. And then from there, that tool turned out to be really useful and interesting. And from there, we said, well, what about ingredients? Because a lot of these sites in the recipe space, and the majority of our users are currently in the recipe space. We are not exclusive to the food space, but it's certainly where we found our first niche, and we've developed some features for it, including ingredient-based search. So if you have your ingredients categorized in the traditional way that they would display on Google, which is .json, we are able to parse that and then find ingredients. So you could then say, I want to search ingredients. You click on ingredient search within Slickstream's search panel and say, chocolate chips.
Chocolate.
It'll find
Yeah.
all the recipes with chocolate chips or
Wow.
or eggs or milk. So it's a way you can say, what do I have in the fridge? I'm going to search this site and turn all of that up. And again, that's not, we're not, this isn't groundbreaking technology in the sense that other search tools are able to do some of these components. What we're trying to do is provide it as sort of an all-in-one suite that enables you to have access to some of these more professional features within the context of a tool for bloggers like you, right?
Well,
That's
and
it.
look, food
Yeah.
bloggers are really busy. We wear a lot of hats. And so, um, fin- over finessing our categories, like maybe we have a dessert or sweets or maybe even cookies, but to take it down to chocolate or, it's a lot of work to go through and do all of that. Whereas you're just kind of saying, ta-da, here it is.
Yes. And the ingredients one is funny because you might think that you turn up, if you're searching chocolate chips, you'll find chocolate chips. Why do you need the ingredient search specifically? But this was feedback from publishers that led to it. This was one of those areas where publishers were like, well, what about ingredient search? We've heard this from visitors. They say they have these three things in their kitchen. How do they find the content that matches that?
Yeah.
It just turned out that was something that we were able to do based on existing structured data within your site. So the work that the bloggers have already done
Yes.
wasn't being fully used, and now we're trying to make sure that it is to find that value that of the work that's already in place.
And what I'm trying to say is like if somebody had the wherewithal and they wanted to do that manually on their own, the amount of work it would take, especially once you get over a certain number of blog posts, it would take a lot of work to do that manually. Whereas you're right. I mean, if you have the database is right there, why not just, use the data that's already there and say, chocolate, here you go.
Well, exactly, and it's just it's so hard,
Yes.
for a blogger to come in, and let's say you've built your audience organically, you started out as a team of one, maybe you now have a team of three or four, maybe social
Yeah.
media, etc. But like you're a successful blogger, that doesn't mean you're a statistician, that doesn't mean you're a web developer, that doesn't mean you know how to do every single component that goes into running the business of being a blog. It's really valuable that there's so many tools to educate, but it's also unfeasible for everybody to be an expert at everything.
Right.
I, I,
Exactly. And
yeah.
yeah, go ahead.
No, I think that it's one of the biggest challenges that we've heard from our publishers is just knowing what to do and knowing that you're not missing out and you're not doing stuff wrong, right? That your WordPress plugins are all playing nice, that you're optimizing in all the right ways, and there's this serious sense of kind of FOMO. Around, am I doing things right? Am I missing some opportunity? So having a service where we'll often, for example, we have a very high touch customer service, especially in the onboarding stage. But we'll often, when we're indexing a site, find, oh, your sitemap is funky in these ways, and it's causing a bunch of missed traffic here. This site's not showing up in Google search results, for example, is something that we see sometimes. Or just understanding your site in and of itself can provide extra value that doesn't have anything to do with our components.
It sounds like such a relief because it's like somebody's got your back. When you're busy doing 5,000 things and you don't realize that your sitemap isn't working right. So yes, it's wonderful to hear that.
And it really does just come back to our mission, which is to be your ally, right?
Yeah.
Again, your success is our success at Slickstream, which is just so important for, it's not a we're trying to take advantage of publishers, uh, by selling solutions that aren't going to work. If they're not working, they're not going to use us, and nobody benefits. Right? This is
Right.
one of those. We are trying to create the solutions that are best for you, not only in the short term but in the long term. Um,
Yes, I love it. And so let's talk about the film strip feature. I think that's it's a great tool, and I feel like it's kind of answering. Some people have plugins on their site that says something like content that's related to this content, and I feel like that's what that film strip is doing.
Yes, and there are. This is essentially for those of you unfamiliar. Our film strip is not dissimilar from any carousel or toolbar widget you might have seen that shows related content. We It has some components we like a lot. Like it's scrollable. It's based on our recommendation engine, so that the results are good. But the idea of it is not unique. I think that's safe to say.
Yes. But it's a little bit like social media where I may be looking at one post, but I can see the other ones right there. Whereas if you're on a blog post, you really just see that one recipe. So it's kind of a way of enticing them to look at other content.
Yeah, and that's the checkout aisle component that I was talking about, and that's this this. There are two ways that we can display the film strip. One is inline, so it's always displayed at the top of the post.
Uh-huh.
Some publishers like that, some don't. The other is sticky, which sticks to the top. So you've scrolled down, and when you start scrolling back up, you see the film strip appear with related content. That content is powered by the same thing that powers our search. It's the discovery engine, or the recommendation engine, I should say, that indexes your whole site, finds the connections between this content and other content, and says, oh, people really like to click on this content from this page, so we're going to display that near the top. That is relatively sophisticated. There's machine learning on the back end that populates that. And when you choose to display it is more up to the publisher. But what we do find is that including the film strip is the biggest impact on page views that we can provide. Uh, yeah.
Really? So do you
Yeah,
see impact on bounce rate?
so I can't isolate the impact of the film strip specifically on bounce rate,
I see.
but we do and I can talk about a lot of our testing results at some point. But
Sure.
yes, with Slickstream, we do see a statistically significant decrease in bounce rate. It's about in the order of 1 to 1.5% on average,
Okay.
percentage points. But the film strip itself would be a component of that. We don't have that effect isolated. But the page view increase is very specific to the film strip. That's the checkout aisle. You browse the content and you're like, oh, actually, let me click on this.
But when they click on that, that's essentially a drop in the bounce rate, right?
Yeah, it absolutely would be.
Yes.
The There is sort of, and we can talk about this more if we're talking about the impacts, but there
Sure.
is sort of a tricky statistical phenomenon that even surprised us a little bit, which is that a lot of your page views are hard to affect um,
Okay.
within Slickstream, because a lot of your page views, every session is going to get one to begin with. So anything that you're doing with an engagement on your site is only working with additional page views, right? We can't change the amount of one page view that you get from a user coming in to begin with. So
Okay.
that's often depending on, let's say that you have a 1.5 page views per session, which would be very good. That means that we can only affect about a third of your total page views. And so then driving clicks up in that is going to increase page views, but not by as much as you might necessarily expect. So what we've found is if you can drive about 18% more clicks, which is what this film strip often does, that translates to about a 2% increase in page views. And it's really all coming from those return users, the users that are really enjoying the content that you have, that have found what they were looking for.
Interesting. So the increase in page views then could possibly pay for the service itself, right?
Yeah, I mean that's what we've found to be the case. Is we're generally generating around a 2x ROI. We don't guarantee anything, and in fact, for smaller sites, we have a minimum pricing. So in their cases, we might not be generating the ad revenue that makes up for the cost in and of itself, but in
I
most
see.
cases, we do.
I see. So you find that as a site gets bigger, then you're able to probably impact their revenue even more.
Yeah, both as a raw number and as a percentage. We actually find that big sites are often able to perform. They're generally structured in such a way that they're getting more page views per session. Big sites, if they've done the right things and they've gotten big. There are exceptions to the rule, of course, but
Sure.
the more return visitors, the more page views per session that you're getting, the more impact that we can have.
And when you're talking about a big site, I don't know if you can put a number to that. Are you talking about people who are getting more than 100,000 page views a month, or is it higher than that?
For us, a bigger site would probably be in the 1 million plus range. We
Okay.
have sites from 25,000 page views a month to 25 million, a little more.
Yes.
So we run a pretty large swath. With our pricing, our minimum price is $25, which kicks into effect at 200,000. So for anybody over 200,000, we're generally generating more revenue that we're costing.
But I love that you're seeing, back end data on a large variety of sites then. And as a result, I think what I'm hearing you say is that the larger sites really already do a very good job of generating more page views per visit.
Yes, and there are of course exceptions. If you're optimizing for
Sure.
search traffic, then
Yes.
sometimes the incentives are going to be not around quality of content, but around quantity of content. But
Okay.
we believe, I mean, that's if you're optimizing for just getting a bunch of search traffic in that's one time bounce. So we've seen sites that have very high bounce rates because they're coming largely from search. Our philosophy, though, is around user experience. It really is. If you're building things the right way, it means focusing on user experience, focusing on delivering the right content, and not immediately worrying about monetization. Right? The ad networks are great. It's a great resource for bloggers. But there's this dynamic between bloggers and their ad networks sometimes where they want to monetize, they want to show ads, but sometimes the ads can be overall intrusive. And
Yes.
what our philosophy is if you build an organic return audience by delivering them the content that they're looking for consistently, that will have compounding effects over time that will be significantly more than any short-term sacrifices for revenue right now, based on delivering a worse user experience. And this isn't about ad network specifically, just
Sure.
the sacrifices that you might make to maximize right now, I think are often counterproductive rather than delighting your users and encouraging them to return.
So, in other words, what I think I'm hearing you say is that some short-term sacrifice we might be considering to make would be to take the advertising down just a little bit, so that you increase the user experience, and then they want to come back, doubling your advertising rate, basically.
That would be, yeah, and that's what we've seen, and that's 100% what we've seen in sites that we consider to be just adhering to best practices. Is they're building an engaged audience that's returning, and those return visitors are just so much more valuable. If you're returning and getting multiple pages per session, that will definitely supersede short-term benefits from intrusive. It doesn't have to be ads; it can be
Sure.
non skippable opt-in requests, for example. The things that users might say, ugh, I don't like this, right? They might have
Yeah.
value to you now, but overall, those users would be more valuable if you can delight just a portion of them.
Yeah, I think it's easy to be too short-sighted on that, to think, oh, well, if I have more ads per page, and I'll make more money per visit. But yeah, I think it's always good to, first of all, just get this feedback that, you got to keep an eye on that. It is kind of a bad user experience to have too many ads.
Yeah,
So
and
you
actually,
go
sorry,
ahead.
go on.
No, you go ahead.
Well, so to that effect, we actually in a lot of our A/B testing, we've seen. So we know that we increase page views by roughly 2%, sometimes 2 to 3%. I think that much is pretty straightforward. Oh, Slickstream on site, increase page views. But it's actually not entirely based on pages per session, right? Pages per session we increase, but we also increase sessions per user. So when you're thinking about how do I increase my overall traffic, a lot of bloggers will start with the impression, well, I have to get more people coming in. That's true. But you also have to get more people doing more on site and get more people returning a second time. So over the course of a week of A/B testing, we might see and have seen recently that about a 0.5% more people return a second time for another session. So a
Wow.
0.5% increase in sessions per user is just as valuable as anything else, as page views per session. And when you combine those two, you get the overall page view impact. But I think really when bloggers are focusing on building that organic audience, sessions per user needs to be a metric that they're focusing on. It's not just the amount of page views per session, and it's not just the amount of sessions, right? There's a lot of different ways to increase overall traffic.
Well, thank you for clarifying that because when you first said that, I was thinking, what would be the difference between page views per session and sessions per user? But I wasn't thinking about return visitors, so that makes
Mm-hmm.
sense. We would love to have them coming back and of course clicking on multiple pages when they're there. But yes, okay,
Yeah, and it's not even, all that unintuitive to think about. If somebody comes in from Google and has never seen your site before, and they come in and they get a good experience, they get exactly what they're looking for, or the means to find exactly what they're looking for, they're more likely to say to next time they're browsing Google and see your site come up, or the next time they're even just thinking, I want to go directly to a site that I trust. They're more likely. They might not all do it, but even a 0.5% impact there is compounding over time, right? It's another
yes.
user that's coming in. It's another user that's telling their friends. It's more traffic coming to your site from them, and that effect I think is subtle, and it sometimes can be hard to communicate, but it's pretty inevitable. You give a user a better experience, they're going to be more likely to be a return user.
Well, and there's also that side thing that they might actually tell somebody else about your site too, and that is really exciting. When you get, and I know that I've done like maybe I'm listening to a podcast I really love, and I tell a friend like, oh my God, you got to check this out. We all want to be that, right? We want to create a site that's so exciting that people want to tell everybody else about it.
Yeah, and there's this phenomenon, and I fall victim to it just like anybody. But there's this, you want to be focusing on the tactics. You want to be
Yes,
thinking like, I want to do this and this and this best practice, and that's going to make my site successful. But you could do all of the right things for a site with bad content, and nobody's ever going to come because it's not the site
yes,
that they want to go to, right? Nobody's going to tell their friends go to this site. It has bad content, but it advertised to me appropriately,
yes,
right?
yes.
So, and that's exactly what I think almost every blogger wants to hear is create good content and then adhere to best practices, and the organic audience growth is going to follow.
Yeah, I always feel like though sometimes it's a little bit ambiguous though. Like create good content to me. Like, ugh, well, just could you be more specific? And that's what I'm saying. I feel like you're kind of given the data to say, look, this page is doing really well. This is an example of good content. Create more content like that.
Yeah, and there's all sorts of great services and great options for you to understand what kind of content you really want to be producing. We're just trying to understand. Like
Yeah.
our job in this ecosystem is to understand what's going on to your site and communicate it to you, and try to optimize what we can with your visitors coming in.
I know the question that everybody's going to have is about site speed. So, how does Slickstream impact the site speed for a site?
Minimally. It's probably the number one priority that our engineering team focuses on. We have countless tests, both on and off A/B tests. The answer is minimally. I say not zero because it's impossible to have zero impact. Right?
Sure.
We are injecting something within the browser. What we have found is that it can sometimes be tough for a publisher to parse the difference in site speed uh, based on the timing of something loading, right? So there's things like time to paint, and this isn't my entire. I'm the marketing guy, right? This is not the technical component of my expertise, but there's a difference, for example, in when Slickstream loads or when everything has fully loaded on your page. Ads are by and large the thing that loads last. They
Yes.
just take the longest. They take the most amount of resources. So it's a tricky one where we want to offer the option, and in fact, we just rolled out a big site speed focused thing for Slickstream to load in front if that's what the publisher wants to focus on. Uh, but it's a trade off, right? Because sometimes you want to be showing your ads first so that you're most likely to recoup that value to get the monetized. If somebody bounces before they see an ad, that page view was worth nothing to you. So
Right.
we're trying to strike a balance between making Slickstream accessible immediately or not impacting adversely your revenue. And the best case I can make for it is that we've seen the positive revenue impacts and we're able to evaluate those independently.
Okay, great. And I know that I've seen the testimonials on your blog or on your site, and it looks like the people that are using it are very happy with it. Are you doing like evaluations and getting feedback from your influencers that are using it and like understanding what the problems are and fixing them in real time?
Constantly. I
Yeah.
mean, so we have a 30-day trial that's free. There's not even a credit card. So people come in, they'll try out Slickstream's tools, and about halfway through that, I email you saying, "Hey, I want your feedback. My name's John, and I need to hear from you." And
Yes.
you would be amazed how many people respond to it. I love it so much. I love it when it's negative. I just love that people are taking the time to help us improve our product.
Yes.
So we're constantly monitoring that. It's what guides many of our product decisions. We have great relationships with our existing customers, of which we have about, I think, 300 now. But that's how we hear about any bugs or glitches with a new release or new features that they want worked on. But B, it's how we take the temperature of the space. It's how we understand how food bloggers are feeling. It really became important kind of right around the height of the uncertainty in March around COVID.
Oh, I bet. Yes,
Um,
definitely.
we, in fact, ended up doing a temporary 50% price adjustment, price decrease, because RPMs had been so shredded. Um, and it was devastating the publisher's revenues. Now we've actually done a fair amount of analysis around it and have seen that RPMs are kind of on the way back up. Page views are on the way back a little bit down from their huge spike in the food blogging space while everybody was staying home. Um, but those are the kind of things that we value so much when we hear from customers, because again, if we're going to have a mutually beneficial relationship, we need to understand what their priorities are.
Yes, exactly. And I feel like if anybody wants to see a good example of Slickstream in action, I think going to Pinch of Yum with Bjork and Lindsay is a great, it's a great way to get to see it and see what it looks like and kind of interact with it a little bit too.
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. We love Pinch of Yum. We've
Yeah.
appeared actually on the Food Blogger Pro podcast before with them.
Yes.
Kingston did a long interview with that. They, I think, go to Pinch of Yum. I don't want to pitch a bunch of websites here, but they're a good example. And I think that if I were to direct you to notice anything, uh, it's the way that we blend into the site, because
Right.
we're not about being Slickstream. We're not about being something that you recognize as us and having a lot of affordance specific to us and looking like we're tacked on. We want to look
Yes.
like we're a part of the site, not only because it makes publishers happy, but because it creates a better overall user experience.
Right. Can you talk a little bit about Slickstream stories? I know it's something that's coming and it may be too
Yeah.
beta to talk about, but I would love to hear about it.
No. So Slick Stories is essentially taking social media style story videos, so phone optimized short content in bursts, and you can have either photos or videos. You're familiar with stories, right?
Yes.
It's
Yes.
not a new concept. But a lot of these publishers will put huge amounts of time and effort into their stories and then have one avenue of distribution which they can't really use elsewhere. Social
Right.
media companies are incentivized to keep you within that ecosystem. They don't want you embedding an Instagram story on a website necessarily without it being in the Instagram ecosystem. But you own your intellectual property. You own the content that you create, as long as it doesn't have any features that are specific to the social media website itself. So what the idea behind Slick Stories is providing you a means to feature that content in new places on your website itself, and potentially down the road monetize it. We've been in discussions with some ad networks about means uh, that you could put ads within the stories that you're putting on your site. Right now, we have a handful, I think maybe over a dozen now, sites that are using Slick Stories in its beta, in its test mode, and we have well over 100 on the wait list at this point. It's coming, right? It's exciting, and it's another
Yes.
way to increase engagement on your site. But, and this is really important, we're not going to roll it out unless we know that it helps.
Right.
Like, that's the main thing, is we're not going to roll out a bunch of features that seem cool but actually decrease engagement on your site, because that would be a net loss for everybody involved.
Right. That's why you're doing a test with these, like basically a beta version of Slick Stories.
Yeah, and it helps us understand the way that people are engaging with it. It helps us understand best practices for users creating that content, and for us where to put it on the site. We're still in a learning stage with that, but we do have a wait list that we pull off selectively based on sites that would be valuable for us to understand a little better.
I mean, my gut check just tells me it's a great idea because, if you go through the trouble of doing a how to make cinnamon rolls, and here are the 5 steps that I go through, and you do that on Instagram stories or something like that, and then it goes away in 24 hours. To be able to put that on that post, how great would that be?
Yeah, and I mean it's another example right now of where so much work in the blogging space is just going to waste. So
Yes.
much work that people are doing is not being used to its fullest potential.
Yeah.
That amount that you did to create a handy walk by, a walkthrough with a step-by-step guide to a recipe, or even if it's personal content about your vacation that your visitors are actually interested in. That shouldn't be a one-time only, set it and then leave it and then it's gone forever.
Yeah.
You should be able to get more value out of that. There has to be a way.
Right, exactly. And I think there's some pressure on bloggers, or we have a tendency to be a kind of perfectionist, and we're rewarded for that. Like the better our photos, the more traffic we get, so we're rewarded for doing these top-notch things. So but to have some space on the site that is a little bit more like, Instagram stories is a little bit more raw. It's a little bit more, hey, here's how we really, I mean, maybe my kitchen isn't perfect, but it's, you're going to get to see how to make cinnamon rolls here. So I feel like creating that space on your site is pretty exciting.
And it's another example of where we're trying to apply the following the tracks on the grass to create the
Yes,
sidewalk approach.
yes,
Because what we've heard from so many publishers is my ad networks want me to do video, right? It's a great way
yeah,
to make money. A lot of people are telling me video is, the way to go. But video is so intimidating.
it
It's
is.
so intimidating. And if you get it wrong, then you're not helping anybody, right?
Yeah,
So
yes,
you have to do creating really high quality professional style video is difficult and it's time consuming and not everybody's going to want to do it. But stories are casual, they're easy. It's a different sort of mindset
yeah.
that it puts the visitor in.
Different vibe. Yes, I like it.
Yeah,
Yeah. Okay, John, this has been great. I think we've given a lot of people some really good food for thought on Slickstream, and just just like engagement, and trying to engage your audience in a real way. So I'm excited about that. But I like to ask some fun questions at the end of the interview. Are you game?
sure.
Okay, well, these are food bloggers, so we got to talk about food just a little bit. Do you have a favorite food?
Yes, mission style burritos.
Missions? Tell me what that
So that's
is.
that's like that's San Francisco's specialty, right? So it's the big foil wrap burritos you get at a counter.
Yes.
It's they're like two meals in one. They're always
Yep.
bigger than your face. Uh, I'm from the Bay. To me, the burritos are the perfect food because they're like sandwiches. You can have them in any variety. You can get enough diversity in your burritos to have them for every meal of every day. And seriously, I've been accused of that before. But the mission ones are more specifically the San Francisco variant.
And I don't what does the mission word mean in all of that? What's
Yeah, I mean the San Francisco Mission
Yes.
District is a very
Oh, okay. Got
yeah.
you. I got it. Okay, great. So it's really just a big burrito stuffed with all the things, and okay.
It's when you think about the burritos that are bigger than your face that are wrapped in foil.
Yes.
That's the Mission Burrito of San Francisco.
Oh, I love it. You feel like you're getting your money's worth out of it, don't you?
Oh man, now I'm hungry. Dang.
I'm sorry. Okay, what's the favorite app on your phone?
Favorite app? Probably right now it's Strava, the running app, running, cycling, swimming. I've been getting a chance to run a lot more regularly during quarantine, and
Yeah.
I love the app.
So your commute time is now you can spend it running?
Right, right, exactly. Um,
And
and
what does it do?
there's yeah,
It keeps track of your runs?
yeah. It's Strava's great. It tracks your GPS, your time, your pace, your elevation, etc. And it's nice and social, so I can give kudos to my friends who are running as well. And it's a good means to
Nice.
have a little bit of accountability around your exercise, which is important right now.
Oh, it's so true because it's so easy to have these goals like, oh, I've got a little more time. I can, and then the next thing you know, it's like, oh, it's 5 o'clock. I haven't done anything yet.
Yeah. No, seriously. How does that happen?
I don't even know how
Yeah.
that happens. Have big
Yeah.
goals.
Seriously.
Yeah, I'm lucky that my husband is super routine focused, and we've started doing yoga together. And so I'm the kind of person that would say I would want to do yoga every day, and he's the person that says when he's going to do it, he does it. So we're doing yoga every day.
That's great.
I know, it's pretty nice. Yeah, I enjoy it.
Mhm.
Okay, do you have any time for TV or reading at all? And if you do, what's your favorite?
Oof. I've been reading currently A Gentleman in Moscow, which was a
Ooh.
recommendation from my sister, and I've absolutely loved it. I'd like to make more time for reading, but I
Yes.
probably spend a little more time on TV these days.
Yes.
Mrs. America on Hulu has been sensational.
I've read
That's
about that,
the
but I haven't seen it. Is it good?
Oh, I mean, it's so good. Rose Byrne as Gloria Steinem is fantastic. Margot Martindale as Belle Abzug. It's phenomenal. I
Yeah.
really it's entertaining enough that it's both very historical. It's historical fiction, of course, but it toes the line of educational and entertaining extremely well, and it's just superbly acted.
Oh, that's cool. I can't wait to check that out. I mean, we don't have Hulu, but I'm sure there's other ways eventually to watch it, no? Or is it only you have to have Hulu to
Well,
watch it?
that's the thing is I actually don't. It might be in FX. I don't know what the specifics of streaming has gotten too complicated.
It is so complicated. Like we had Apple TV and so now it's like it seems like all of these other shows that we watch are all on that app and I'm so confused now. I don't even know.
Yeah, no, I
Yeah.
exactly.
So yeah, I'll have to I'm going to check for that cuz that sounds really good. I really want to watch that.
Yeah, I think it's 8 or 9 episodes in now, so we're now actually caught up and are watching a show once a week, which is that's new. That's a thing that I haven't done in a long time. Is actually being caught up with the show and having to wait a week.
Oh, that's kind of hard, isn't it? When you get used to just being able to watch it whenever you want.
It really is.
I'd almost rather wait till the series is over and then just watch it one night, one episode every night.
Yep, yep, that's definitely. Oh, and I should add in quarantine we've been knocking off a long time bucket list for me that my friends have made fun of me forever, which is The Wire.
Oh,
We're just
watching
on
that.
season 4 now, and I understand that season 4 is often considered the best one, but it's great.
Okay, cool. That's another one I haven't watched, so I should put that on my list too then, huh?
Yeah. Yep.
Okay, so how can people find Slickstream online? What's the best way to engage with Slickstream?
Yeah, so slickstream.com, you can go and check out the engagement suite and Slick Stories there. We also are on Twitter and Facebook, Slickstream HQ on both. And if you want to email us, I'm John at slickstream.com or info at slickstream.com works to reach out to the team. But, we try to be very responsive. We try to respond to everybody who gets in touch with us in one of those platforms.
I love it, John. I've had a really good time talking with you, so thanks for joining me.
Yeah, of course, time has flown by.
It really did. It went fast, didn't it?
Yeah.
Thanks to John Greely for being my guest on today's episode of the Chopped Podcast. If you want to hear more about the latest in food blogging, including keeping up on every episode of the show, head to chopped.academy and hit subscribe today. If you're inspired about the services offered by Slickstream and you want to give it a try, just go to slickstream.com and sign up for the free trial using the code CHOPPED200 so you can get the 60-day free trial. Be sure to sign up before August 1, 2020 because that's when the offer expires. Thank you, friend, for your support of the Chop Podcast these last 200 episodes. It's been a joy hanging out with you. I'm looking forward to more episodes to come. If you'd like to show your support of this podcast, please leave a review on iTunes. It really makes a huge difference for the show. You can also send me an email at marley@chopped.academy, and that's Marley with no E, Marly. I love hearing your thoughts and feedback about the show. It really makes a big difference. I love hearing from you too. You inspire me, and I hope today's show was helpful and inspirational to you as well. Thanks for listening, and have a great week.